In this demonstration, I'll be introducing you to responsive web design through the use of media queries that we create in our styles sheet. Right now I'm going to go over to my CSS Designer panel and just explain some of the concepts with media queries. You can see in our list, we've been skipping over it in previous exercises, but we have our styles, list of styles, and in this case it's our external style sheet. And then we have the media query section, and it's always defaulted to this concept called global, which basically means all the styles that we create work globally throughout the website, or any pages, of course, that are attached to that external style sheet. So everything we've created here will work throughout the web page, throughout the website, as long as this style sheet is attached to it. Now we're going to introduce a media query, and I think the best way to do it is just to demonstrate here. And I'll add a media query right now. And a screen pops up, and I'm going to use minimum width as my standard today. And I can go in here, I'm going to leave it on screen. And we can see we have minimum width. Some designers will use maximum width, and other designers will use a combination of both. For the sake of the introduction, I'm just going to work with minimum widths today. But you can see we have a lot of criteria that we can establish to determine a media query. And let me explain a media query while I'm setting this up. I'm going to set my minimum width here. I think it's 768 pixels. And there's the actual code that you would see in your style sheet. And I will click OK. And then you see this icon appear in my media query list. You'll notice in my selectors it is now completely empty. So the way that these work is that here on my bar is a representation of my minimum width. So if I click on this bar, it'll actually shrink it to that size, 768 pixels. So what this will do is anything bigger than that, the following selectors will apply to it and will override anything that's in the global list. So the global list works everywhere, but a media query style will override the global list. And you can even have styles by the same name inside of there and change their properties, and they will take precedent over what's in the global. So that's the basic concept. Global works throughout, but media queries will override what's in a global set. So I can grab this bar here and move it around, and you can't see anything right now, so I'm going to make some changes, but I'm going to double click here just to fill the screen again with my page. But now I have one media query, and it is a minimum width of 768 pixels. Once again, anything I change in here will only be affected above that size, so anything below will remain true to the global settings. So here's something very cool. I can go to global settings. I can actually copy any or all of these and paste them in or move them over to that query. So let's say I just want to change the color background of this section right here. If I click on there, I know that's section right. So I'm going to just right click on section right, and you can see here I can copy. There's a number of options here. But I'm going to go duplicate into media query, and I know some of this is cut off by the screen capture, but it's giving me a list of any media queries, and there's only one right now with my minimum width of 768 pixels. So I'm going to go duplicate into media query and click that. Now if I go over and click on that media query, you can now see that that style, that class style, is currently contained inside of the minimum width 768 pixels. And let me just show you on the style sheet, and I'll just go to code view here for a second. At the bottom here is my media query, say that 10 times over. And here are my properties. So I can actually go in and customize these, and they can be totally different than the section right class style that's applied in the global set. So I'm going to do it through the panels here. So I'm going to go back to source code and split view. By the way, I am in live mode here. And we'll make some changes, and the one I propose is to change this color in this gradient. So if I go down here, I'm in the media query, I'm in the selector called section right, and I'll go to background colors, and we'll just click on there, and highlight that. And again, I know that my color picker is outside of the screen capture, but I'm just going to pick a red here. And just hit my return key. And you can see how that quickly, immediately manifests itself. So now it's a red to clear gradient. And if I was to move my slider here and go below this, take note on the color of that gradient. Okay, so I'm changing the size here. And watch what happens. Well, actually I can click on here and watch what happens when I get smaller. Boom. So depending on the screen size, usually this is based on the devices, this can change. So any of the properties can be changed to be just specific to the designated minimum width media query. So again, if I bring that back out by clicking here, it will assume red at the top of the gradient whenever it's bigger than 768. And that's what we mean by minimum width. This is the minimum width that this particular style will be applied. Anything below it, it will not apply. So whatever's in the global set will take over. And that's really the basic concept right there. So we'll go through and maybe make another minimum width. We'll make another media query. And I'll show you a different method here. So I'm going to go up to, say, 1000 pixels here. And with this bar open, which you can open and close through this icon here, with that bar open, I can simply click on the plus sign, and that's another way to add a media query, and it shows up with the dialog box, and I'm just going to pick minimum width. And you saw we had the three basic choices: minimum, maximum, or min-max. And if I wanted to change this here, I could type in a different number, but 1000 was what I wanted. And where do I want to put that? Very importantly, designate it to my style sheet that I've already created, and click OK. So here, maybe I'll change it to blue. So I need to go here, and again, I need to copy that one. So I'm going to right click, duplicate into media query, and you see I have the two of them now. I'll click minimum width 1000 and just go over to that one. Be very aware of which one you have selected, and I'll select that selector, that class style, and we'll go to background colors, and maybe I will change it to a blue. Again, you can't see, I'm outside of the capture zone here, but I've changed it to a blue. And I'll hit my return key. And now it's blue when it's bigger than that size. When it's bigger than 768, the smaller one, of course, will take precedent until it reaches that limitation. And if I go anywhere below, it's white. So white, red, and blue. Okay, so those are the basic concepts in creating media queries and having custom styles applied to the specified media query. So let's see here. I'm going to click on this big one here, and maybe I'll make this text bigger here. So let me click on it, see where I am. Section right, H2. So I'm going to make a custom one. That's another thing we can do. We can make styles that are only applied or only existing within a media query. So I'm at the minimum 1000. So I'm going to make a new one here for the H2 inside of section right. So dot section right H2. Hit my enter key. And let's go over to our text and font style, font family. I can change any of these. I'll go down to font size, and let's use M's, and I'll try 2 M's, and we'll see what that gives me. And maybe I'll try 3. I might come back to 2.5. 3. There we go. Actually, I'm just going to keep that for the sake of the demonstration, but certainly much bigger. So if I go down to this, you can see how it's kept the same global styles there, but when I go here, I have a style that overrides the global style. So you not only can copy and modify existing styles from any of the sections from another media query or from global, but you can also create custom ones that only exist inside of that media query. If I go to global, we should not see section right H2. And true enough, it's not there. It's only there. So you can see how you can get quite complex and quite specific with this. And this is the, I guess, the best, what they say is best practices, latest, greatest method of styling websites today that will work on multiple devices. Okay, so again, I'll just pull the slider here. And you can see how things change according to the media query. And that's our basic lesson on creating responsive web design using media queries. In another lesson, we'll take this much deeper and start to play with percentages versus fixed widths. Again, percentages will lend themselves better to this liquid layout, if you will. Okay, so I can click on here, I can click on here, and then I can also drag the slider. And I can double click this to go full screen. So again, that's our introduction to responsive web design using media queries in our style sheets. I best save all of this right now. Save all. And there we go.